Welcome, guys, to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host, Tony Evans, taking you through a wild and wacky story this week. I've often thought that in life there is forever the Spinal Tap moment, and I think this is another one of those Spinal Tap moments that you wouldn't believe it unless you heard it. Now, it's a two-part show, so the beginning of the show will be just a basic history of this particular album and band, and then the second part will be a review of the album. So it's slightly longer, I think. We'll see how we go. I haven't timed it, so we'll go. Lots of notes, so if you hear me rattling paper, that's just me, as you know, mucking around with my books and my notes. Right, so it's Nwabum's Forgotten Heroes, in my opinion. One of the greatest new wave of British heavy metal albums ever made, and one of the pioneers of the genre, yet unfortunately not forgotten, but not as well known as they should be. In my opinion, they should be up there with this particular album anyway. They should be up there with Maiden and Saxon and people like that. They should be on the tip of your tongue when you're thinking of new wave of British heavy metal. So, you know, way back in 1976, in Wolverhampton, schoolboys formed a band. It's Brian Tatler, singer Sean Harris, who was in the same year at school, and they formed Dimond Head. Now, Dimond Head at that point was just a how do I say this nicely? They were basically a Led Zeppelin cover band. You know, they just did Led Zeppelin sounding tracks. Nothing wrong with that. If that's your beef, if that's your, you know, your thing, good luck to you. But then they took 3 attempts to get a bass player for the riding on Colin Kimberley in 1978. They recorded 2 self-funded demos in 1979 on a 4-track. It took 6 hours to record, and it was recorded. They sent the tapes to Jeff Baker. That's Sounds. Now, Sounds, if for those who don't know what Sounds is, those younger listeners or listeners overseas from the UK, but I mean, Sounds was the music magazine or the music newspaper that everyone wanted to be in. It was either NME, which is the New Musical Express, or Sounds. They were very they rivaled each other, but they were the paper to be in before Kerrang and Metal Hammer and all that sort of stuff. They really influenced the way that music was listened to and where the charts went, both those papers. So very powerful. Nothing really came of it. But they were managed by... They did finally get 2 managers. They got Ian Fraser and David Morris. Now, these were good old-fashioned, old-school managers, right? So, you know, I believe that David drove the band up and down the country, you know, helped them get their gigs, basically did everything they could, old school, you know, like spending every pound he had in his pocket on the band, thinking they were going to go, you know, really far. Unfortunately, Sean managed to get, well, this is where it goes wrong. Sean managed to get his mother's then boyfriend, who she worked for, to listen to the demos and to invest in the and to try and invest in the band. Now, this is where the Spinal Tap thing really starts to hit. All right, guys, this is when, unfortunately, with all fantastic creative endeavours back then, it would have been a bit wry, right? So they managed to drop their managers, Ian Fraser and David Morris, in favour of Sean's mum and her boyfriend. All right. Now this is where the big oops happens. Now, the mum's partner's name was Reg Fellows. Now, it did actually work at first. They got, because of the demos, they managed to get a supporting act for then small band, but getting bigger, AC/DC, and Iron Maiden at the Lyceum in London. And the Lyceum is a theatre now where the Lion King plays, but it used to be the main music venue where all the punk stuff and all the metal stuff. It was quite a grungy little place in Covent Garden. But and I remember going there when it was a music venue, so it was pretty. It was at its tail end when I went in the mid 80s. But yes, so that worked. So they managed to get that with a little bit of investment. That seems to happen, right? So you're thinking, okay, this can't be that bad. You know, their mum and boyfriend were investing. They got managers. But the downfall became when they were advised by Sean's mum's boyfriend to change management. Now, unfortunately, Sean was still living at home at the time, and so felt obliged, I think, to take their advice. Poor that it was, because this is where, again, I keep saying because it goes bad, but bad deals and money issues occurred. They had both Brian and his and Sean's both Reg and Sean's mum had unrealistic expectations of the band. They were so sort of convinced that this band were going to be the new next Led Zeppelin that they kept holding out for record deals. They kept pushing and looking for lucrative deals, but eventually they couldn't. They couldn't find anything because everyone kept pushing them aside because they kept wanting more and more and better deals. So they thought, hang on, we better get an album out. We better record an album. So they recorded with a local at a local recording studio owned by a man with a great name called Muffin. Right, what a great name! You don't get people like that anymore. Muffin, right? So they record that, and what happens is they can't afford to pay for the recording, the week's worth of free recording. So what do her mum and boyfriend, the mum of Sean's mum and boyfriend, wrangle? And now this really gets me. I cannot believe this. They said Muffin provided them the free recording studio and time for 50% of publishing deals for the next 15 years. 50% of publishing deals. The publishing is where the band makes most of its money, right? So all of a sudden, this small-time record studio owner has managed to get 50% of this small band's income, which makes it even smaller. Like, it's just ridiculous. Who would sign that kind of deal? People that are not professional managers. That's the problem. And this band felt obliged to use them, which is a real shame, right? But it gets even worse. When they released the album, they released it in a small batch of 1,000 print. No stickers, no labels, just a white cover. The first 250 were recorded were signed by the band, right? But here we go, and I've written this down as the Spinal Tap moment, right? The Spinal Tap moment, unbelievable. The person who was going to press the albums and then release them on his label, have a guess, Muffin, right? So now, as he got 50% of publishing deal, he's also got the band's label. He's got the band on his label, so he's getting money from them as well. So basically, this poor band with so much talent, so much incredible potential, is being held back by the fact that they had two good managers. I think Fraser went on to work with Iron Maiden. You know, this right because of some filial loyalty, some loyalty to the mum's boyfriend, Sean's. You know, and what an amazing voice. Don't get me wrong, just brilliant singer. But there was a point where you got to go, what's happening? Like, I think this is the trouble again. I think this is an allegory for a lot of local bands. It happened with, I watched the Wham documentary recently with my lovely wife, who's a big Wham fan, and the same sort of thing happened. You know, writing contracts in cafes, not getting professional advice, being used by the industry, when a time when the industry really was basically held together by the major labels. So because they couldn't get eaten, they went independently, and the independents knew that they could make a killing out of these naive musicians who were riding a wave of a genre that was cracking and breaking. I mean, let's be honest, I've told you this about before, I think that new album is the birth of heavy metal. I mean, I know that people gone back to Purple and Black Sabbath, yes, but the actual birthplace of it comes from the British new wave of British heavy metal. Anyway, I mean, I could be wrong. Either way, it doesn't matter. But this particular album, this is so sought after by collectors. It's like the holy grail of new album heavy metal albums. It really is very hard to get hold of. It cost £3.50 originally on mail order only, and only available at gigs. So not only were they restricted to sell it only at gigs, but at mail order, and the mail order was owned by Muff Muffin. So here we go. This guy, I don't know much more about him, to be honest with you. Just gives me the creeps even thinking about him. He really did control this band's history, and what a shame, right? Another again. Keep going about the Spinal Tap moments. They advertised the album in sounds for 6 weeks, right? 6 weeks they advertised the album in sounds. Their management, i.e. Sean's mum and her boyfriend, didn't pay the bill and got sued by Sounds. There you go, really. So when they would have lost that, so not only were they'd have to pay for the advertising, they would have to pay for the court fees. The band's not making millions of dollars. I mean, you work it out. 1,000 copies at £3.50 each. All right. I'm gonna pause this, and I'm going to do my maths. It would be £3,500. Even back then, that wasn't a huge amount of money, and you had to split that in all the different ways. 50% of that, plus some of that, goes to Muff Muffin, right? And his record label. So you're looking at 1,750 goes to the band, which then has to be split to the management, then has to be paid for transport and for accommodation and advertising. It's pennies, right? Sorry about the noise on the mic. I've ordered a new mic. It's coming. If I even look at it these days, it seems to hum, right? Anyway, that will get changed. But the original masters were lost. Now listen to this. I mean, the original masters were lost when sent to Germany. They sent the masters to Germany to a record label out there, Wolf Records, and they just seemingly disappeared. And it wasn't until 1990 till Lars Ulrich from Metallica, and this will come obviously more obvious when I get to talk about the actual album on the second part of the show. But Lars tracked it down with the help of his record label, because they produced an album in 1990 called the New Wave of British Heavy Metal 1979 Revisited, which I've never actually heard. I've never seen it, so it's out there somewhere, obviously. But that itself was a good thing, wasn't it? Because they managed to track the masters down, because they released it on CD before the masters were found, and it was all sorts of glitches. So if anyone has Lightning for the Nation, on CD, one of the early prints, you'll hear that there's skipped intro, there's missing bits, it's pretty poor transfer to that amazing album. And so that was their legacy until 1990, until Lars found the print. Of course, now we've got wonderful. I just bought a reissue of it recently for $59 US, sorry, Australian, which is not that much really, and it's a fantastic 180 gram reissue print of it with a beautiful artwork. It's actually the artwork, I believe, that the German label gave it, because they actually gave it artwork and they gave it a presentation, whereas the, you know, I think Muff's label, was it Happy Records, didn't do that, you know. So, sorry, settings. So, you know, so it sort of, they were advised to drop their management, right? They were advised to drop their management by a media producer called Pete Winkelman of Media Records, but they declined that to stay with their management because he was going to take over and look after them. And he did for a little while. He did a one single for them. They reissued the single "Sweet and Innocent" back with the Streets of Gold, which was released in 1980. But one single, and that's all they did. They didn't go and stay with him. And so, you know, continuing on, you get absolutely awful downfall, because they got their break. In January 1981, they opened for April Wine, a Canadian heavy rock band, middle of the roady for me, not my kind of thing. You might like it, I don't know. But the stupid management put all of the money they had into a big Pantechnicon truck, lighting, sound. They hired the local chapter of Hell's Angels to do their bouncing and their security. And it just basically, they had to record a 4-track EP called Diamond Lights to fund it. And they recorded it in 3 days. And to no surprise, it lost money. What a surprise, right? It had no advertising. They did not advertise one bit that they were touring. They did not advertise one bit about the EP. Yet they expected to make money hand over fist to help these lads, reach their potential. I mean, I've gone on about it a bit on this show, but it's just amazing, isn't it? That to think that, I think it probably still happens today, really, but I think nowadays people produce themselves more independently and they don't use management as much as they probably used to. But, you know, it is that, you know, that bit in Spinal Tap where the wife of the guitarist, they're talking about, you know, you can't record the album in Dobley, and then and the album comes and it's blacker than black, you know, and they just this nonsense of someone who thinks they know better than the professionals. It really stuns me. When I was researching this over the last few days, I knew that they had a bit of a sort of checkered past, but I always look beyond that because the album itself is such a great album. Like, it's so full of iconic moments that just, you know, that changed the way that some music, you know, some metal even was made. Unfortunately, you know, boom. But all things did change because A&R man Charlie Ear quit his job from A&M Records to go to MCA to sign the band. He was so enthusiastic about the band. He also signed Musical Youth, but we can't hold that against him, you know, because we don't always want to pass the Dutchie on the left-hand side, if you know what I mean. That's a reference to the song. Sadly, I think they all went to prison for drug offences, did they not, I believe? I don't want to besmirch anyone in the band, but I think that was the case. Or it could have been tax evasion, one of those ones. I say evasion, you say avoision, you know what I mean? And they managed to actually finally land a 5-album deal on the January the 1st, 1982. Which was, you know, brilliant, right? Absolutely brilliant. But before we can sort of get to the album, right, and we talk about the album on the B side of this show. I just want to say that they did get some breaks. They managed to replace. They were given the replacement spot for Man of War at Reading because that Man of War pulled out. It was recorded for the Friday Night Rock show by Tommy Vance. So it wasn't all downward, always all a downward look, right? The first MCA record, Borrowed Time, had the most expensive sleeve that the album label would ever produce, a double like a gatefold. It was designed by Rodney Matthews. Does a lot of sort of Celtic artwork. It got to number 24 in the charts. It was heavily played by Tony Vance. The third album, unfortunately, not so good. It was an experimental album, originally going to be called Making Music, and then it was turned into the album Canterbury. Now, I've got Canterbury. It is an odd album, to say the least. All right, it was all experimental. Half the band left. It sort of, the drummer had a nervous breakdown. Only recorded 6 tracks in 6 weeks. After the album was completed, the bass player left. It was basically really I think the years of mismanagement and focus and direction really killed them off, sadly. They're still going, of course. You can still see them at festivals. They still play around. Different lineup now, of course, but that's okay. They still play the album, the one they're known for, the one that's, like, for me, like the cornerstone, as I said at the beginning of the program, of the genre, along with Iron Maiden's Iron Maiden. It is a fantastic album. Now, let me wrap up this side. Sorry, I'm trying to read from my notes, which makes me distracted because I'm flicking papers around. Normally it's off the top of my head, but I actually woke up with a bit of a migraine this morning, and so a little bit of vagueness runs in there. Anyway, so wrapping up, poorly managed, brilliant musicians, Spinal Tap moments. Also, sorry, because of the failure of Canterbury, MCA cancelled their deal. They did not put the money up for a third album, which is a real shame, isn't it? I mean, that's another thing with record labels and I suppose so much these days now as well, is they're not willing to, to keep faith. I mean, Meridian were lucky, weren't they? Because Misplaced Childhood came out. Squifford Just a Tear was an absolute smash. Fugazi, the second album, fared poorly, and they were worried that they were going to get the pin plug by EMI. They managed to hold in, recorded, Misplaced Childhood, the biggest album they ever recorded, one of the biggest albums of 1985, and made huge money, and therefore the band were back in favour. I think a lot of labels, particularly the smaller labels, MCA is a smallish label, would have thought, hang on, well, the average cost to make an album, let's say the average cost is about 100,000. Well, if they get the 100,000 and they don't get that back in sales, well, they lose, don't they? But I suppose you got to take a punt, got to take a risk. Sometimes these albums get a second life as a cult album, like I said, the first amazing Diamond Head album. Now it's it sells big numbers all over the place, but it didn't when it first appeared, right? And that's a lot of the case with all good art, really. Sometimes art does take longer to gel into the consciousness and the mindset of its listeners. But anyway, that's enough of me rambling on. We'll chat on the other side about the album more in detail and its influence. Anyway, enjoy the ads. I know I do. And I'll talk to you on the other side. Bye, guys.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. It's hard to believe that inflation is still a thing, but boy, it sure is. And that's exactly why Mint Mobile still gives you premium wireless for just $15 a month. Well, it's also because we have that offer printed on, a million t-shirts, but it's mostly the inflation thing. So give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months required. New subscribers only. Renew for 12 months to lock in savings. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See mintmobile.com.
Before I start the second part of the show, I forgot to mention that I've just tacked this in because I've recorded the program and completely forgot. From future on, now you can listen to the show on YouTube. You just go to the YouTube and type in Heavy Metal Tones, and you should find me. I'm slowly putting up episodes. I'm down to about 20 or 30 up so far. I can only do 3 or 4 a day as the algorithm lets me, and there's 120 episodes to do. So if you do want to go and listen to it there, please be my guest. If you want to go and leave some comments, great. Please do so. Please try and be positive. Negativity doesn't help anyone. Subjective, not reactive, as I like to keep saying. Anyway, so future going on, it'll be on every platform, of course. If you're listening to me on iTunes, please do give me a review, because it helps me get to more iTunes listeners, because it helps with the algorithm. That's enough for me. I'm going to hand over to Tony to talk to you in the second part about Lightning to the Nations. Cheers for listening. Welcome back, guys, to part 2 of the show. Now, the review for this album is going to be the 2020 release. It has 3 extra tracks on it that are cover versions. We won't really cover them too much because I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about original releases. So if you were listening to the album and want to, along with me or after the show, and you go to Spotify, because you'll only get the 2021 on there, I believe. You want it to end. It ends, the final track of the original release of the album ends with Helpless. It's a 7-track album. You've got Lightning to the Nations, The Prince, Sucking My Love, Am I Evil, Sweet Innocent, It's Electric, and Helpless. And after that, it has special. There is a few more tracks that are added on. There is a cover version of an Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin. There is Sinner by Judas Priest, and Rat Bat Blues by Deep Purple. So let's not talk about those, because most of us know those songs. They are brilliant versions. I would highly recommend you listening to them. But let's start with Lightning to the Nation, shall we? A call to arms on this album. I personally think at 4 minutes 15 is one of the cornerstones of the movement. It opens with fantastic sort of instrumental piece. You know, the guitars surge, the drums kick in, the bass is rumbling, the vocals then take into that with this fantastic kind of Robert Plant sort of wail, and you get your typical Nawabum anthem-esque music and song, right? It's I think criminally underrated. In my opinion, should have been. It's one of those songs that if you're going to put it with, like if you're having a top 5 or a top 10 Nawabum anthematic songs that you would on an album somewhere. Lightning to the Nations and Am I Evil, both off this album, would belong with Iron Maiden and Priest's, Breaking the Law, Motorhead's Ace of Spades. It would be all there, right? And you can see with this album why bands like Metallica and Megadeth and Anthrax all have that sound that they have now, because it really comes from the birth of this album, particularly from Am I Evil, which is on the B-side, the second side of the album, track 4. Now, these aren't short pieces of music. These are, 3 tracks on the opening side is pretty daring for its time. You have Lightning to the Nations, which again is a call to arms, musically fantastic, dirty, wonderful kind of, Gibson flying V. Brian's Gibson is just squeals on it, and then we move into track 2. Right, track 2 for me is my favourite on the album, alongside of Am I Evil, and that's The Prince. The Prince has got a real dynamism to it, a real thunderness to it, almost sort of progginess at 6 minutes 27. I'll give you the lyric, because I find it the lyric here actually quite fascinating. Let me just get my lyric sheet up for it. One moment. This is, well, let's get, where was I? I'm going to get there. All right, okay. Now, also, you can get this album that's not the 2020 print, but I just like the way this is mixed. It's been cleaned, and it's got a stronger dynamism. It's got better separation on it. Okay, let's get the lyric up. Here we go. Right. Now I see his face, I see his smile. Such a lovely place, no golden mile. His eyes tell of morbid tales of his blackened heart. His deeds through ages past tell of his part. See his face, see his smile, time to die. O angel from below, change my dreams. I want for glory's hour, for wealth's esteem. So basically, it's a sort of typical New Album trope of using fantasy, which a lot of the early bands did. A lot of history of stuff. Maiden did it as well. So did Saxon. But mainly those sort of bands like that. Sort of another one was Praying Mantis. But it sort of does. It has that sort of chivalric. Is that the right word? It's chivalry. It has a chivalrous feel to it. It has I'm going to protect you, my princess kind of, vibe. But the music is so different to everything else that was sort of around that time. It really shows that with a little bit more nurturing and a little bit more right management, as we mentioned the first part of the show, poor management, they could have been as big as Maiden, and sadly they should have been, really. That we should be thinking about them in the same sort of mindset. I don't know how they would have gone. I mean, Maiden became Maiden because Di'Anno left and Dickinson joined, and I know that's quite controversial, but that is the truth. They could expand and stretch themselves. Who knows what? As I said, after Canterbury, which was a bit of a mess of an album, where they were going to go. I think it was too early for them to experiment 3 albums in, personally. But anyway, we moved from The Prince, which is a cracker of an album, to one of the, in my opinion, one of the things that makes people cringe when they watch New Album videos or listen to New Album bands of the early era, and this is Sucking My Love. This is called. Honestly, sorry, I get this whole Spinal Tap Suck My Love pump vibe. It's all about, it's full of sexual innuendo and machismo, and it's like that a whole bit in Spinal Tap with where he's wearing the he says, "Oh, only men come to our gigs because girls are too scared because we've got monsters in our pants," that sort of thing. It's a little bit cringeworthy. I mean, the music's all right. It's nothing spectacular. Good solo in it, but it's just, I don't know. I would drop that off the album and put something else on. I just think that there's a little bit too juvenile. And I know they were youth when they wrote it. They were teenagers, and teenagers think with their pricks. We know that. We all did, right? But still, I don't know. It seems immature and naive, to the point of cringiness. So, you know, one downside to the album is this song. I really, it's a shame. It's a real shame. It closes off that side of the album, really. But it does. It's 9 minutes as well. It's like I love a long song, guys. I really love a good song. It's got some fantastic musical parts. Take the lyric out. Keep it an instrumental. It would be brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Then we flip over the album and we come to what is considered, like, along with Angel Witch is Angel Witch, Iron Man's Iron Maiden, as I mentioned earlier, Motorhead's Ace of Spades, Breaking the Law by Priest, Am I Evil is one of the best sing-along dark singles of the early 80s. You know, the lyric, am I evil? Yes, I am. Am I evil? I am man. It's brilliant. It's basically about watching his mum being burnt as a witch and his revenge on her. He may have been watching Witchfinder General. Who knows? The brilliant movie with Vincent Price. It was out around that time, so maybe there was a lot of those movies out. In The Devils by Ken Russell, one of my favourite movies of all time. I've talked about it before. A lot of that kind of witch movies were around then in the satanic panic of the 80s. So late 70s, early 80s. So Am I Evil? It's just, again, you go from the immatureness of Sucking My Love to this brilliant piece of lyrical thought in, you know, this sort of wonderful piece of I don't know, Jungianism, is it, or some kind of philosophy? You know, am I evil? Yes, I am. Am I evil? I am man. Brilliant, absolutely bloody brilliant, right? Musically fantastic, lyrically one of my favourite lyrics of any heavy metal song, to be fair, along with Angel Witch is Angel Witch. And you know, it just, I don't know, beggars belief, really. And then we move into the single that came afterwards, their first single, Sweet and Innocent. Is exactly what it says on the package. It is very Zeppelin-y. It's very Young Love. It's the antithesis of Sucking My Love. It really, really is. It's beautiful. It's innocent. It has this sort of 60s sort of vibe that I really dig. Man, you know what I'm saying? Man, I dig it. It's a nice counterbalance to Am I Evil? The perfect dessert for the main meal of that particular song. It's got a brilliant guitar solo in it. It's got a lovely rocky vibe. It's got almost some sort of like status quo-esque, you know, another song, ba-jump, another song kind of a feel to it. It chomps along. You can hear Brian's fantastic flying V, Gibson chugging away. It's a really nice piece of music. And then we go into It's Electric. Now, It's Electric polarizes me because it's a bit, I don't know, I'd say pandering to an American audience. I don't know if that's the right term. But it has this sort of later Def Leppard, sort of Lynyrd Skynyrd, Journey kind of AOR feeling guitar, vocal, lyrical point. It's about making it in a band, obviously in a heavy rock band, because it's talking about being electric. You know, it's got that kind of, I don't know, T-Rexity to it. That's okay. I like that. I love T-Rex. We all love T-Rex, but it has that sort of that, and that sort of I don't know, not the Thin Lizziness, because Thin Lizzy had that swagger. This is a bit, I don't know, it feels like it's pandering to the American audience. It feels like the sort of thing that, you know, bare-chested Texans with medallions and tight jeans, you know, flares, you know, would sort of really dig. And I just don't know, it leaves me cold. So, I mean, that and Sucking My Love, it just goes, It's still a great song. Don't get me wrong. It's one of those ones you could skip and not worry. It's got a good solo in it. It's musically very good. It's just this sort of almost faux American accent that he puts on when he's singing it. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway. And then we end the album on Helpless. And I really love Helpless because it's got a brilliant thundering drum opening piece. It changes direction quickly. It's got a simple lyric. It's I will grab you the lyric for this. 1 second. Here we go. There we go, look at this live. I've got to see you moving fast, see you come my way, see the dreams I hope they last, never fade away. Got to see the lights above, make it loud tonight. Got it, set it all on fire, set it all alight. I can see the flashing lights, I hear the thunder roll. I'm gonna set you alight, gonna make it, man. I ain't got no choice. Got to fill this hall tonight, helpless. So again, very educated. Because these are boys from the black stuff, from a part of the world that was really ravaged by Thatcher's governments, closing dockyards, closing factories, privatising industry. It was all about, it was coming into that point where it was all about yuppies and filofaxes, the amount of money that was being sucked from the north to back up the whims of the south, and this is coming from a southerner, but I've got northern family, and I know I lived through those times and know exactly what it was like, and it was really dire. And the only way out was rock and roll for a lot of bands. But, even the classics like Black Sabbath, they got out of their industries and out of the black lung disease, which is pneumoconiosis, which is black lung, which is horrible. It's what my grandfather died of. He was a miner, and then he grew up. No, there we go. I'm joking. He was a miner, so he could never get into 18 movies. Love all those jokes. Anyway, yeah, they just had to break free, and that lyric tells you, and it's a brilliant way to end the album on, because it's saying, hey, I've got to get out of here. You've heard the album. Now tell me what you think. Let us get away. Let us be famous. We've got the talent. And it does show they did have the talent. They did have the ability. They could write brilliant songs. They could also write some awful lyric that was probably, with better management, and this is another thing, with better management, hindsight, I would have gone to them and said, look, guys, I don't know if Sucking My Love is a song that I'd put on the album. I mean, you're going to polarise your audience. I suppose back then in 78, 79, 80, they didn't really think about polarising audiences, that they just wanted to make songs, and it was something they'd written probably as a young kids. It was, again, a little bit too Spinal Tap for me. But anyway, it's a brilliant album. If I was to give it a rating, which I don't do, out of 10, I'm going to give it 9, because 2 of the songs, or even 8, because 2 of the songs do jar with me. But unfortunately, it's, what can I say? It's a moment of its time. It's a space in history when this stuff was made. I mean, to be fair, the only band that didn't really succumb to it was Maiden. Didn't succumb to that kind of stuff. I mean, later on, yes, Charlotte the Harlot and 22 Acacia Avenue, but they were a bit more educated and clever than just going on about, basic sexual innuendo, and which a lot of these bands did pander to, sadly. But musically wonderful. If you ignore the lyric, the music will take you on a journey which you'll be happily to go with them. What a shame that they never were as big as they were. But this album is definitely worth the listen. If you've never listened to it, when you've put this podcast to bed and you've listened to the end, go and grab some streaming version of it. Fortunately, I think the only version is the 2021, but the 3 cover versions at the end are really worth it. You can hear the influence. The Metallica song is very apt, because Metallica cover Am I Evil a lot, so it would be very good for you to hear that. I really love the Immigrant Song version. I'm not a Led Zeppelin fan, but I do get drawn along with that song. And, if I was choosing a Deep Purple song, would I choose Rat Bat Blues? Probably not. But, hey, they all have their favourites. They all have their influences, and that's their influence. So anyway, who am I to judge? I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed the potted history of a band that could have been more, the cautionary tale of a band that, of what not to do, how much Spinal Tap really has influenced a lot of thought in the world these days, and how we all do think about Spinal Tap moments, and a brilliant, brilliant album that begs you to listen to it, that really sits in the pantheon of the greatest heavy metal albums ever made. Sadly, not on the lips of everyone, and they should be. That's right, Lightning to the Nations by Dimond Head. Brilliant, brilliant band. Great bunch of guys. I've seen interviews with them. Brian still rock and rolls the band, still takes it on tour. If you ever get a chance to see them, yes, it's not the original lineup, but you do get to see one member of the band, and he is brilliant. Anyway, that's me for the day, for the week, for the hour, for the moment. Chat to you next week. I've got an interview lined up with a brilliant band from Perth coming up. Whether that comes out next week, I don't know. The interview is this Thursday coming with a band called The Burning. Brilliant horror-based thrash metal band, right up my alley, right in my ballpark. So let's hope that happens and you get to enjoy that. Anyway, talk to you soon, guys. Bye for now.